Hi, I'm Nellie Knitter, and today I'm going to show you how to do the turn of your heel. Now, the important thing to know about the turn of the heel is you're going to be working part of the way across your rows, and then turning your work in the middle and working part of the way back, and then turning it again, and you slowly kind of go back and forth and extend the amount of stitches that you work until you get to the end and all your stitches are worked. So this is a tricky concept at first because you're just used to knitting to the end of the rows. But once you see it in action, it's quite simple. Okay, so the first thing, we're going to continue to slip like we did all the way up the side of our heel flap. So we'll slip the first stitch, and then we're going to knit 17 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. And here I always count to make sure that I have 18 stitches. So I have 5, 10, 4, and 4, 18. Okay. So now comes my decrease part. So I do my slip, slip, knit for my decrease. So I slip 1, slip 2, and then I insert my left needle into those 2 stitches and knit the 2 of them together. And then I knit 1. And now I'm at the end of my first row and I'm ready for my turn. So I'm going to do that and turn to the back side of my work. Okay. So like the side of my heel flap, I'm going to slip the first stitch every time. So I'm going to slip. And this was relatively simple. I'm going to purl 5 stitches now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then I'm going to do my decrease. My decrease on the back side of my work is a purl 2 together rather than a slip slip knit. So I take those 2 stitches that I have there on my needle and I purl them together. And then I purl 1 more stitch. Alright, and then I'm done that part, so I turn. And now you'll see here is the last stitch that I worked from that row, and that's my slip stitch. And you'll notice that the next stitch that I haven't worked yet, there's kind of this big gap on the needle in between those 2 stitches. And this is what I call the gap, and you always decrease across your gap. So I'll slip this stitch and slip this stitch because they're on either side of my gap, and then I'll end up knitting the 2 of those together. And then I always work 1 past my my decrease. And when I get to the end of this row, I'll turn around and you'll see the same gap on the other side. So again, I always slip my first stitch. I'm going to knit across to that gap. It should be 7 stitches or 6 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, and there's the last stitch that I worked, and there's that big gap in between there and there. So now I know I'm ready for my decrease. So I'm going to slip, slip, and knit the 2 of these stitches together. And then I always work 1 stitch. Now I'm ready for my turn. And you'll see on this side, here's my gap, because I have this stitch and the large gap between that stitch, and you can see there's actually like a little bit of a hole there, and that's how I find my gap. So I'm going to follow the same process. slip, purl until I get to that gap. This time it should be 7 stitches. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then there's my gap. So I'm going to purl, because I'm on the wrong side of my work, purl those two together and work 1 extra stitch. And then I'm going to turn again. And now I'm on the last row of my turn. So I slip and knit to the end where my gap is. Yarn. Okay. Now I'm at my gap. This time it's a little weird because you slip your 2 stitches and your needle comes free. And then you knit the 2 of those stitches together and your needle's free. There. Okay. Now I'm on my last row. So I'm going to slip. I'm going to purl across to my gap. Alright, now I'm at my gap. I have my last 2 stitches left, and that's my decrease, so I purl together. And I always count my stitches here to make sure I have the right number of stitches. I should have 18. So I have 5, 10, 15, 18. Okay, and now so that you can see this, here's my heel turn, and you can see it kind of creates, here's those stitches that we worked across at the beginning, kind of creates this V in your work on either side. Now on the, I posted a link on my blog too that tells you about this turn. This turn's called a French heel. There are other types of heel turns that you can do, and there's a whole list of them there. And if you're working with a different number of stitches, other than 64, which is the one that we've cast on, there is a link there that gives you exactly how to do your turn, no matter how many stitches you have on your needle. So that's your turn, and that's probably the most stressful part of your sock. And now that you're done that, we'll finish there until next week when we do the pickup along the sides and join it back in to make it a circle.